Sam is a mythical and ancient deity whose origins may go back as far as 500 BCE, when the earliest Samhain celebrations took place in Celtic Ireland, to celebrate the end of the harvest season and the beginning of the darker half of the year. During the gathering of the harvest, neighboring hillsides were illuminated with great bonfires, which families would use to light torches and ignite their own hearth fires at home, which some sources believe were to continue burning until the harvest collection was complete. Their fires were said to keep away evil spirits, which was important because this festival called for ancient burial mounds to be opened. It was believed that these mounds were portals to the otherworld, a realm believed to contain Celtic deities and spirits of the dead. On Samhain, the veil between the living and the dead would be at its thinnest, allowing them to cross into the world of the living. With spirits and gods roaming free for an evening, a tradition was put in place to appease them, with offerings of food and drinks in exchange for the survival of livestock over the coming winter. They also built altars to honor their dead ancestors, composed of elements from the natural world, like colorful leaves, burning candles, and symbols to commemorate the dead. They also used crops that were abundant in the fall, such as apples and pumpkins, to symbolize the harvest, and at some point even placed skulls, skeletons, and images of deceased family members to symbolize and honor the dead. In Celtic folklore, a she was a fairy or flying supernatural entity, but these are a far cry from the pixie-like depiction of fairies often seen today. They were seen as troublemaking spirits, with some of the most popular examples of Irish fairies being leprechauns, short-fused mischievous little men, banshees, wailing female spirits with warnings of death, and changelings, deformed unwanted children that other fairies would sometimes swap with human babies. The Irish word she literally translates to sudden blast of wind, so their fairies are really more akin to what we now think of as ghosts. Samhain was believed to be the time when these spirits could cross over. In particular, there were a few fairies associated with Samhain, like the Puka, a shape-shifting goblin that could take the appearance of animals or humans and bring either good or bad fortune. The Lady Gwyn was an evil headless woman wearing white, luring journeymen into danger. The Dullahan was a malicious headless horseman foreshadowing imminent death or misfortune. To protect themselves from this array of spirits, it became tradition to dress up as monsters to scare away the evil entities. This practice was known as guising, like disguising. In the 1500s, those wearing the costumes, known as mummers, combined their traditions with another practice known as souling from the Dark Ages. They would go door to door, singing songs for the souls in purgatory in exchange for soul cakes. Failure to participate in Samhain festivities was seen as taboo, and it was believed that those who did not take part would be punished by the gods with illness or even death. Celebrations began in the evening on October 31st, the midpoint between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. As you may have figured out by now, this holiday eventually changed and morphed with other cultures over the years and became known as All Hallows Eve, or what we now know as Halloween. Altars for the dead became Halloween decorations, hearth fires became jack-o'-lanterns, mumming became Halloween costumes, and soul cakes became Halloween candy. Punishment by the gods became punishment by toilet paper, and guising became trick-or-treating. Which brings us back to Sam. As customs fused and evolved over the years, Sam's role was to uphold the traditions at their core. Even his name goes back to the ancient Celtic festival, which is spelled like this and sometimes mispronounced as
Samhain.
Thank you, Dr. Loomis. To learn how Sam became the ever-present deity upholding the rules of Halloween set thousands of years ago, stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Horror History. This is a show where I analyze the timelines and lives of some of the most feared characters in the horror genre. But occasionally, in horror history, we have to go back in actual history to understand a character's origins. However, I have to admit that is only partially the case today. While Samhain and fairies and banshees were all actually a part of the Irish folklore dating back thousands of years, Sam was not actually a part of that in real life. He wasn't even loosely based on a character from Irish folklore. While there are an array of deities, Samhain was not one of them. It was just the name of the festival, literally translating to summer's end. Sam actually began as a doodling that writer-director Michael Doherty created in class when he was bored. The burlap sack over his head is meant to make him feel like a cross between a pumpkin and a scarecrow. Doherty wanted the design to represent the holiday's dual nature, cute and creepy, fun and frightening, mischievous yet malevolent. After making hundreds of drawings of the character, he decided he wanted to do something with it, so he spent 9 months hand-drawing the animated short film Season's Greetings as his senior thesis at NYU. Then, the character was featured in actual greeting cards that he sent to friends and family, and eventually he sold the cards to a local shop in Burbank for distribution. Sam also found his way into other animated shorts, such as Hallmark cards in 2001. He also began to experiment with sketching Sam without the mask at this time. After showing the short film off around the industry, he was advised to write a feature-length script as a vehicle for the character. So he combined 3 short stories he'd written as homework assignments in college to create the script for Trick or Treat. So Sam's association with the ancient Celtic culture is something that only exists in universe. But in a way, the rise in popularity of Trick or Treat street through screenings, merchandising, and fan artwork, has cemented Sam as a Halloween icon. He's become an unofficial mascot of the holiday, and that was by design. Doherty explains, "I realized that while Christmas has Santa Claus, Easter had an egg-laying rabbit, and Valentine's Day had chubby winged children that shot arrows at your heart, Halloween was missing a mythological mascot. I knew the character must be out there. He was just hiding." The image most commonly associated with Halloween is the jack-o'-lantern, which is a practice derived from the Irish folktale of Stingy Jack, an old drunkard who tricked the devil into agreeing to never take his soul, leaving him to forever wander the plains between heaven and hell with only a light inside of a hollowed-out turnip to light his way. That turnip eventually became a potato, which eventually became a pumpkin, which eventually became Jack Skellington. Sam continues the tradition, as his uncovered head seen at the end of Trick or Treat resembles a hollowed-out pumpkin skull, and his body is filled with pumpkin guts. While Doherty has stated that he'll never reveal Sam's true origins, there is an extensive history to unpack in the comics, the movie, and many short films that the character has appeared in. So to fully understand the motivations to this mysterious malevolent munchkin, we've got to take it all the way back to Ireland in the mid-1600s. On October 24th, 1640, a man named Thomas is criticized for showing mercy on witches during their execution. The man in charge of the executions, Commander Wulfric, explains that the harvest season is ending and the pagan witches will soon be at their full power. He sends Thomas to the interrogation tents to toughen him up, where he rescues a suspected witch named Bridget. She explains that what Thomas's people perceived as a devil worship ritual was actually an act to honor the spirits of the dead. We believe it's the one night when they're permitted to return, so we light candles and bonfires to guide them. We offer crops as gifts and dress in guises to protect them and us from the truly dark forces that prowl the night. She clarifies that they believe all life is sacred and uncovers a seed hidden away under a specific rock, claiming it contains the last of her people's magic. As days and nights pass, Thomas is unable to see the devil in her eyes, and Sam can be seen observing Thomas's internal struggle from afar. On October 30th, Bridget is tortured by some of the other soldiers and uses her magic to break free and grow pumpkin vines, which are able to shape themselves to unlock her cell. Instead of escaping, she finds Thomas, who has grown sick, and uses her vine magic to cure him, while simultaneously giving him a vision of the slaughtering of her people by the Christian soldiers. Her execution is set for the next night, October 31st, Samhain. Thomas attempts to rescue her, but they're captured by Commander Wulfric, and as they're being burned at the stake, Bridget sees Sam, his eyes glowing in a clearing, and believes that her prayers have been answered. Wulfric smashes her magic pumpkin, but the next day, a young girl discovers it, collects the seeds, and brings them with her during her eventual journey to the New World. Thomas and Bridget go on as spirits, and Sam's face can be seen in the blood moon that supposedly gives power to their pagan cult. Sam's role in the story is essentially a protector of the Samhain magic that allows the supernatural to come to life on October 31st. Thomas and Bridget are forbidden lovers whose relationship represents the cultural diffusion that occurred to combine the pagan holiday of Samhain with the Christian holiday of All Saints' Day to create Halloween, as it is celebrated in the West today. We literally see their seed go on without them to the New World, where Sam would continue to watch over it for autumn celebrations across many different cultures, the next of which would be in the Wild Wild West. Illinois, October 29, 1853. European settlers have brought their Halloween traditions to the Americas and are actively spreading further west through the construction of a transcontinental railroad. When we first meet our main character of this story, Sarah, she's even reading The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the tale of a man haunted by a headless horseman, a direct connection back to the Celtic fairy, the Dullahan, proving that the Halloween she celebrates has a direct connection back to Ireland. But they are not the only ones celebrating the falling leaves. Sarah's father discovers a Native American tribe blocking his potential train route. Sarah befriends a native girl named Pawani who teaches her about her tribe's shaman, praying to the corn maiden as thanks for their bountiful harvest. They discuss good and evil spirits, so Pawani gives her a small cornstalk version of Sam. Even though the tribe does not know what Halloween is, they still recognize Sam, which tells us that Sam is a deity who watches over all autumnal festivals from a variety of cultures, not just those directly derived from Samhain. Sarah asks if he's a good spirit, and Pawani tells her, "I would not say that, but the shaman told me he is very old and very powerful." Sarah carries her Sam doll with her as she tries to convince her father to leave the natives alone, to no avail. In the night, she sees the corn maiden and follows her shadow back to the tribe, where she's informed that the maiden was once a human whose touch brought life to the crop fields. But when the gold seekers arrived, they feared her magic and killed her. But even when her blood fell, fertile crops arose. They celebrate the autumn harvest to honor the corn maiden and teach children of the dangers that lurk in the dark hearts of man. Sarah tells of her own Halloween traditions, and they agree to celebrate together. The next morning, she even gets the unexpected blessing from her father, who sends her with candy. Sarah crafts her own Samhain lantern to protect them from the evil spirits, but soon discovers that the candy her father sent with her was poisoned, as a covert attack by her father looking to clear out the Indian settlement. Sam, or as she knows him, the Great Autumn Spirit, takes notice, follows her to the shaman's cauldron, and seemingly grants her the power of the Corn Maiden, giving her the magic ability to take revenge on her father and his friends, vitriolically growing vines out of their intestines before appearing in the fog with Sam at her side and annihilating her death. She takes Sam's hand before disappearing back into the corn, with the only evidence left behind a patch of pumpkins with the settlers' shocked faces imprinted upon them. In this story, Sam demonstrates how the old tradition of guising and souling must be honored, even as it takes a different form on a new continent. The deal is to offer sweets in exchange for culture. The tribe shares their culture with Sarah, and by extension, the settlers, but the railroad men violate the deal by poisoning the candy given in return. And this is not the last time we would see Sam act on a situation like this. But first, Los Angeles, October 30th, 1955. Jake Perkins is a private investigator without any interest in celebrating Halloween. One day, a woman hires him to find her missing sister, who may have been involved with a cult leader known as the Echo Park Devil. His search eventually takes him to a movie producer named T.E. Knickerbocker, who, by the way, is named after the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood, which has housed many stars over the years. Anyway, when he arrives and peeks through the window, he sees a ritualistic costume party, with many monsters gathered around a pumpkin resembling Sam's head. Thinking Jake is the killer, they kidnap him, but once he clears his name, he finds out that they were all performing a ritual to honor their fallen sisters, the victims of the Echo Park Devil. Like the pagans in the first story, they too are just misunderstood innocents, celebrating nature, the spirits, and the cycle of life and death. They've been praying for an avenging angel to finally defeat the Echo Park Devil, and they believe that that person is none other than Jake, chosen by forces much older and wiser than either of them. That force appears to be Sam, so Jake relents and searches an abandoned church where he finds the missing girl, just as he's ambushed by the devil. The chase leads them to the rooftop, where after a tough battle, the devil is thrown off the building, and he's eventually unmasked to reveal the mayor of the city, the one capitalizing on all of the fear about the killer in his re-election campaign. As if things weren't strange enough, the missing woman was revealed to have been dead all along, and she did not even have a sister, implying that it was actually her ghost who hired Jake onto the case, with Sam seemingly pulling the string. It ends with Jake, now with no choice but to be a believer in the supernatural. In this one, Sam protects the Halloween tradition in multiple ways. Non-participants have long said to be punished by the gods, and Jake's lack of Halloween spirit is because he believes that dead is dead and gone is gone. He doesn't believe that any of it is real. He's also taught to honor the dead throughout the story. It is only after finally visiting his deceased wife and son in the graveyard when he realizes where the Echo Park Devil is hiding. The last story of the Days of the Dead comic takes place about 50 years before modern day, most likely the mid-1960s. James and Rory are a pair of troublemaking kids who get caught vandalizing houses on Halloween night. Rory is the son of the reverend at the church. As they're being punished, they're all surrounded by a horde of classic monsters, including werewolves, witches, vampires, and demons. While the adults are scared away, James and Rory put their masks back on, allowing them to blend in with the monsters undetected. That is, until the Grim Reaper appears before them and they wake up under an apple tree in the midst of an awesome Halloween party put on by the monsters, and decide to celebrate with them. Judging by their hands, they seem to be slowly turning into monsters themselves, and they join the crowd as everyone gathers around the leader, which of course is Sam. He throws a handful of candy into the fire, causing it to shoot skyward, and some of the monsters fly up after it. James and Rory spend the night riding around with the monsters, dispersing candy to kids all over town, ending at the church, where their community is holding a lock-in designed to prevent them from doing anything fun on Halloween. The monsters break their way in, and the boys join them in terrorizing the congregation. When the Reverend spots Rory, he tells him, "I always knew there was something wrong with you." Rory attacks him, claiming he'd rather be like a monster than be like him. But just then, the clock strikes midnight, and the monsters disappear into the night. James urges them to take their masks off before it's too late, but Rory claims that this is where he belongs, and the Grim Reaper fully turns him into a monster before taking off and leaving his best friend behind. We then jump forward to basically the present day, where James has just finished telling his granddaughter each of these 4 Halloween tales, and she runs off to trick-or-treat with her friends. Only one of them turns back, and it's Sam. He looks up and sees Rory in his monstrous form flying over the moon before he's greeted by the Grim Reaper. And that's it. We don't find out what happened after that. I think Sam's purpose in this story is to be the catalyst for mischief. According to English historian Ronald Hutton, when imitating malignant spirits, it was a very short step from guising to playing pranks. Samhain pranks became common in Ireland and Scotland, leading Samhain to be known as mischief nights in parts of those countries. Remember, Sam is neither a good or evil spirit. He is simply an embodiment of all things Halloween and Samhain. It's also significant that these pranks came at the expense of the church, because while most Christian churches have come to accept Halloween, some very religious groups still object to its celebration. Also, this present timeline with James and his granddaughter is not given a specific date. It's more or less modern day, along with each of the short films and of course the movie, which all seem like they could be set in the 2000s, a time when cell phones and rotary phones still coexisted. The movie does feature a werewolf transformation, so if we're going by real-world calendars, the nearest full moon on Halloween would have been in October 2001. However, the movie also features a flashback, allowing us to jump back in time and catch Sam in a period bygone. 30 years before the events of Trick or Treat, so most likely sometime in the 1970s, a school bus carrying 8 troubled, disturbed kids from Happy Shepherd Academy went off its usual route on Halloween, and past a pumpkin patch where Sam can be seen prodding at a dead crow with a stick. The bus stopped before the quarry's edge. The driver had been hired by the children's exhausted parents to dispose of them, but when he got up to check on their chains, one of the students got free and sent the bus barreling off the cliff. Based on the ancient legends of the spirits of the dead roaming free on Halloween, Sam did not necessarily have to intervene in order for these kids' ghosts to haunt the area every October 31st. In this instance, Sam is just a bystander with an interest in all things morbid, but his next appearance would be less passive. In Season's Greeting, Sam appears as a trick-or-treater, and a man follows him into an alley and tries to beat him up. But Sam destroys him and carries him away in his sack, before revealing his true supernatural nature. Obviously, the lesson here is that you don't f with Sam, and it's important to keep context in mind too. This was the first thing he ever appeared in, so viewers would have assumed that he was just a kid in a Halloween costume, until the end. To a bystander, Sam appears to just be a kid in a strange costume. In fact, director Mike Doherty insisted on it being an actual child in the costume to ensure that the body language would be authentic, which ties into the desire to make Sam represent both the fun side of Halloween and the scary side. Charlie Corrigan was a portly child of 180 pounds. According to the book, he typically spent Halloween terrorizing the mites who took the time to dress up, stealing their candy and amassing a hoard as the night went on. Given this arrangement, he didn't have much need to dress up. Why bother if you could just take all the candy you wanted? Well, maybe one reason is disguising yourself from getting caught, which is what happens when his principal, Stephen Wilkins, sees him in the act of taking more than one piece. Wilkins gets the boy's guard down by offering him more candy, which makes Charlie violently ill. This candy has been laced with hydrofluoric acid, causing Charlie to projectile vomit, a reference to one of Mike Doherty's favorite horror movies, The Exorcist. After lugging Charlie's massive body inside, 3 other students come trick-or-treating at Principal Wilkins' door, asking to have one of his jack-o'-lanterns, which he allows them to get them to leave him alone. We'll come back to them, but as they exit, he notices a 4th figure. It's Sam, who says nothing as he hastily takes his candy. Wilkins has passed this test. There's no Halloween rule about kidnapping an obese boy, I guess. As Sam walks away, pay attention to his bag. It sounds like there's a live cat in his sack, a possible reference to the original old sketches of Sam. Wilkins buries Charlie in the backyard, drawing annoyance from his next-door neighbor, Mr. Krieg, but not before decapitating him and using the head as a jack-o'-lantern that he carves with his son in the basement later that night. Since there's no rule about what you can use as a template for your jack-o'-lantern, remember, the original jack-o'-lanterns were made from turnips and potatoes, this also doesn't get him in any trouble with Sam. However, he would run into other issues later that night. He puts on a vampire costume for his date that evening, who he ends up making out with in an alley next to the Halloween parade. Though his fangs are fake, his bite is real, and he draws blood from the girl, whose pleas are ignored because everyone assumes that it's costume blood. Jumping back to the beginning of the night, Lori, her sister, and their friends are a group of girls visiting Warren Valley, Ohio for their yearly Halloween boy hunt. And when I say hunt, I mean that literally, because although we don't know it yet, these girls have lycanthropy. They're werewolves.
I don't know why we drove out here when there are perfectly good guys in the city. Fresh meat.
They choose a different city for their ritual each year.
Tampa was 2 years ago. I remember because you cute were doing a guy in the back of this pickup.
I ate some bad Mexican, and it was a G.
Notice how she didn't say Mexican food. The girls each go as fairy tale characters, with Lori dressed up as Red Riding Hood. They set out to find dates for the party that they're going to, and the girls try to give her advice about losing her virginity. She goes off on her own for a while to try to meet someone, but eventually finds that someone has a sinister eye on her. It's Stephen Wilkins again, still dressed in the same vampire attire from earlier in the evening. He follows her through the woods later that night, sneaks up behind her, and grabs her.
My, what big eyes you have.
Only Laurie puts a twist on the classic tale. In the original Red Riding Hood fable, a wolf disguises himself as Red Riding Hood's grandmother and tries to eat her. But in this case, Red Riding Hood herself is the wolf, and the predator. She tosses Wilkins into the party wrapped in her cloak, then emerges from the woods in a new costume. After explaining what happens to her sister, she informs Wilkins that it's her first time and begins her transformation into wolf as she tears him apart with her teeth. Sam watches this ritual intensely. It's also significant that Wilkins goes out as a vampire, because vampires and werewolves are known to be rivals. It seems to stem from the old Universal Monster Versus movies, and maybe the fact that vampires avoid the sun while werewolves lose control at a full moon. The popcorn affair between these two supernatural races doesn't seem to have any ties to the ancient traditions of Samhain, but it is possible that this is a newer tradition that Sam seems to be embracing. The transformation itself was shot to stand out from traditional werewolf transformation scenes in movies. In Tales of Mayhem, Mystery, and Mischief, collaborator Bryan Singer explained how Doherty wanted it to look like a sensual experience rather than an excruciating hatching process. The werewolves transform in a kind of Dance of the Seven Veils, where they strip down to their true form. There's also a great emphasis on the fact that Laurie is a virgin, which turns out to be a word that they're using connotatively. They're referring to her first time devouring a victim, but the allegory for sex is obviously still there. If my thesis that Sam is meant to embody Halloween and its traditions is correct, then I see no reason that that couldn't include more recent traditions, like the one where many young women use their costumes as a means to draw romantic attention to themselves. In recent decades, the holiday has taken a page from horror movies to become something both sexy and scary. But when you're a kid, hopefully, the focus on Halloween is more about fear and mischief. So let's go back to the beginning of the night once more. After collecting a carved pumpkin from Principal Wilkins' house, 13-year-olds Chip, Macy, and Sarah hit up Mrs. Henderson's house looking for another. Here, we literally see how Halloween is celebrated differently as you get older. The three are joined by Schrader, who has collected an additional 3 jack-o'-lanterns. Then, they come across the jackpot of all jack-o'-lanterns in the front yard of Rhonda, who they refer to as an idiot savant, someone with high aptitude in one subject but reduced intellectual or social functioning. They all head out to the quarry, where Rhonda demonstrates her extensive knowledge of Samhain to Chip. Upon arriving, Macy says that they're going to pay their respects to the dead and tells the story of the crashed school bus. Each of the 8 jack-o'-lanterns they've collected represents one of the lost souls from the school.
We're going to leave them by the side of the lake as an offering to those who died.
The mining elevator used to descend into the quarry can only hold 3 at a time, so Rhonda and Chip have to wait for the second trip. They hear blood-curdling screams from their classmates below, and when they reach the bottom, Chip acts as if he's too scared to go on, leading Rhonda to venture forward and look for the others in the dark all on her own. Rhonda roves through the thick fog in search of her lost classmates, and she comes across the deserted school bus. With no sign of the others in the vicinity, she's suddenly grabbed by what appears to be a pair of zombies. She runs for it and finds Chip lying on the ground with another zombie standing over him, intestines dangling from its mouth. They all give chase, and in a moment of panic, Rhonda slips and hits her head on a rock. She's knocked out, and when she awakes in tears, she learns that it had all been a cruel prank orchestrated by Macy. As they get ready to leave, Macy kicks the last nearby jack-o'-lantern into the lake, extinguishing their final means of protection against the spirits. They are surrounded by ghostly voices, and before long, see the ghastly silhouettes of the dead schoolchildren surrounding them. As they try to escape, Sarah is pulled away into the abyss, and Chip, Macy, and Schrader continue onto the elevator, where they find Rhonda locked behind the gate with the only remaining jack-o'-lantern. But with her sympathy towards her spiteful classmates long since expired, presses the button and returns to safety without them. As their final screams emanate from the quarry below, Rhonda sees Sam hiding in a pipe, and they have a moment of eye contact. Or in her case, I guess, sack contact? That sounds kinda wrong, but each of them continues on their way. The book specifically describes this interaction from Sam as a nod of approval. Something I found interesting was that Rhonda is wearing a witch costume throughout the story. Samhain was first observed by pagans in Ireland, and paganism has long been tied to witchcraft. Jumping back to the middle of the evening, Old Man Krieg is the older version of the bus driver from Happy Shepherd Academy and the legend of the quarry crash from 30 years ago. He's now a grumpy dude living in a dark house with his dog, scaring away trick-or-treaters and stealing their dropped candy. Doherty describes him in the book as a Scrooge-esque man, tormented for not celebrating Halloween's strict customs. I think an argument should be made that he's actually celebrating in his own way. Although he has no decorations, there's still a spooky ambiance, and he's clearly feared by the kids in the neighborhood. He doesn't dress up, but he does give his dog a costume, and he does put his own twist on the exchange for Halloween candy. The visual design of the character is actually based on John Carpenter, the director of the movie Halloween, who has not been shy about the fact that he doesn't really care what other filmmakers do with the Michael Myers character, because he's collecting a paycheck no matter what. Because of this attitude, he is paid a visit by the Halloween spirit, Sam. First, he hears his dog barking at someone on the front porch and comes out to find that it's now covered with over 30 jack-o'-lanterns. He comes back in to see the doggy door to the backyard swinging and his dog barking at something up the stairs. As he turns on the lights, Sam can briefly be seen running across the landing. He follows the sound to his bedroom, where he finds an animatronic skeleton hand under his sheets, and a jack-o'-lantern resembling Sam in the corner suddenly goes up in flames and illuminates text painted on the wall and ceiling in red, spelling, "Trick or treat, give me something good to eat." As he's taking this all in, Sam reaches out from under the bed to cut his calf Gage Creed style. He looks on in surprise and horror as Sam reveals himself and tilts his head like Michael Myers. Once Sam has peeled his candy wrapper back to reveal a razor blade, a reference to an old urban legend about evil neighbors putting razors inside of the Halloween candy they hand out, Krieg shoots at him, but misses, blowing up the jack-o'-lantern instead, another Halloween sin. Sam disappears, and it's not entirely clear if he's more of a ghost-like creature or if he just dove out of sight. Krieg trips on some loose candy and falls down the stairs, hurting his hands on the broken glass now at the bottom. As his now tender hands frantically try to unlock the front door, Sam sneaks up, crawling along the ceiling behind him and ambushes him from above. The wall crawling technique is something we've dealt with a lot in horror history when discussing various demons, from The Conjuring's Malthus to Insidious's red-faced demon to Hereditary's Payment. This could suggest that Sam is demonic, though I don't think he's ever explicitly referred to as such, and as I discussed, most monsters associated with Samhain are Celtic fairies. After a struggle, Sam is thrown into a mirror and Krieg tries to get the attention of his neighbor, Mr. Wilkins, for help. However, he's tackled and choked, so he pulls a move out of Laurie Strode from Halloween's playbook by reaching up to remove the mask of his attacker. What's revealed underneath is a sinister-looking skull resembling a pumpkin head with indentations around the eyes and mouth to better resemble a jack-o'-lantern. Sam screeches in his face, but Krieg manages to throw him off, so he bounces back to feast on the old man's leg. However, Krieg also gets a hold of his gun and blasts Sam into the air across the room, pumpkin guts splattering out on impact. No amount of shots, however, are enough to keep him down and prevent his severed hand from stabbing Krieg in the foot, like something out of The Evil Dead 2. When Sam's loose hand finds the rest of his body, he regenerates, puts back on his burlap mask, and grabs a new piece of candy from his bag, a huge lollipop, which he bites into to create a sharp point on the top. He winds up to strike Krieg with it, but when he goes for the kill, his tomahawk swing lands in the chocolate bar that Krieg had recovered from one of his fleeing trick-or-treaters. By accidentally giving this chocolate bar to Sam, he completes the trick-or-treating transaction, clearly having chosen treat, and the ancient tradition is complete, so Sam is satisfied and munches down on his candy like a child. As he walks away, he looks back at Krieg as if to say, "You got lucky this time, don't let me find you breaking the rules again." And he seems to have the ability to open and close the door without touching it upon his exit, adding to his mysterious set of supernatural abilities. When Krieg answers the door for trick-or-treaters later that night, he's wearing bandages from his encounter, which double as a mummy costume, and he's sure to be generous with his candy offerings because he can see Sam standing just beyond his yard, making sure that he's celebrating the holiday the right way. But Sam's night is not over, and he turns his attention to another character who's going to violate the rules of Halloween. Married couple Emma and Henry return from a night of Halloween festivities, and Emma is eager to take down the decorations because her mother is visiting the next day. Against her husband's warning, she extinguishes the jack-o'-lantern before midnight.
Why?
Ancient tradition?
Henry, it's Halloween, not Hanukkah.
As she commits this sin, Sam watches from across the street, and to make matters worse, she begins taking down the display when Henry goes inside and utters the forbidden words.
I hate Halloween.
Sam hides in the box that she's storing everything in, and when she tosses in a white sheet, he explodes on her, drawing screams as he traps her within the sheet and slices her throat with his especially sharp Halloween lollipop. This scene terrifies a trio of trick-or-treaters, and he drags her back into the yard, just as he had dragged the man in the original short, Season's Greetings. Emma is dismembered, and she becomes the scariest part of the yard display that she tried to destroy. When Henry comes looking for her, he discovers her head affixed to a post with Sam's signature lollipop jammed into her mouth. Emma's fate comes as no surprise. Not only did she disrespect the holiday, but her extinguishing of the jack-o'-lantern breaks an ancient Samhain tradition, which would have allowed the spirits and monsters to come out and harm her, which turns out to be exactly what happened. Perhaps it is Principal Wilkins who said it best.
All these traditions, jack-o'-lanterns, putting on costumes, handing out treats, they were started to protect us, but nowadays, no one really cares.
But Sam's holiday traditions, surprisingly, are not limited to just one day a year. It's presumably a different Halloween when a young child attempts to craft himself a Frankensteinian friend using human body parts, candy corn, and chocolate syrup. Sam lends a helping hand by supplying the kid with an abnormal brain, which is the last ingredient, before electricity that is, to bring this monstrosity to life. It appears he also takes part in some trick-or-treating of his own during the day. This is from one of 10 ads for the Trick or Treat Marathon in 2012. There are another 4 of these that take place on Halloween, each one highlighting one Halloween rule using this girl. They include wear a costume, which doesn't directly feature Sam, but is probably the aftermath of one of his attacks, always pass out treats, self-explanatory, never blow out a jack-o'-lantern, where Sam is presumably the one dragging this vandal off screen, and always check your candy, where Sam can actually be seen hiding in the reflection of this mirror. Michael Doherty is also known for making the Christmas horror movie Krampus, which focuses on strict Alpine traditions and legends. So obviously he knows a thing or two about other holidays and their origins and customs. The rest of the shorts take place on other holidays and milestones throughout the year leading up to Halloween. The day after shows the mess left behind on the morning of November 1st, ending with a pumpkin seed magically planting itself in the soil, which ties into the idea of a cycle of life and death that was part of the reason for the beginning of the Samhain celebration in the first place. It also retroactively connects nicely with Seed, the first trick-or-treat comic chronologically. Snowmen takes place in what I'm assuming is December based on the Christmas music, where a bundled up Sam helps a little girl bury her dad alive inside of a snowman. It's not clear if this man broke some kind of Christmas tradition, or if Sam is still just getting back at people for the sins that they committed on Halloween. But what is clear is he's probably not the first one to suffer this fate. Easter candy features Sam in a pair of bunny ears, seemingly orchestrating a series of horrific events at this family's Easter brunch. Or maybe just spectating. Father's Day is the wholesome celebration of fatherhood.
To the best dad in the world.
This schizo middle-aged man sets up this whole scenario where he has a family that cares about him using a series of mannequins on strings. Sam, the nice guy that he is, offers a shrunken head stitched like a baseball, and the two play catch. Finally, the last short of the calendar year before coming back around to Halloween is called Back to School, which shows Sam packing up various things like his razor blade candy bar from the old Mr. Krieg segment of Trick or Treat, the shrunken head baseball and glove from Father's Day, and his signature lollipop into a Dead Man's Bones themed lunchbox, which he puts in his burlap sack and wears it like a backpack at the bus stop. Although he seems friendly to them at first, they eventually end up piled inside of his bag, just like the man that tried to cross him all the way back in the first short he ever appeared in, Season's Greetings. We don't know what these kids' transgressions were though. Each of these shorts serve to tide us over throughout the rest of the year until Halloween, but in a way, they serve a similar purpose for Trick or Treat fans, tiding them over until Trick or Treat can finally get a sequel. The future of Sam is uncertain, but in an interview at Beyond Fest in 2022, Michael Doherty revealed this.
I am going to ask a question that I'm sure you're all wondering. A sequel.
I'm very excited about the possibility. Legendary is very excited about the possibility. It is currently in active development. That does not mean greenlit. It is in active development, very active. And I hope that we'll be able to share some more news about that soon.
If and when that day comes, you can be sure I'll be updating this video with my complete analysis of Sam. So if you love Halloween and love horror, make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for all notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.